So Entrepreneurial Appetite is a series of events based here in San Antonio, Texas, but we've taken it virtual for the purposes of expanding our audience. And our goal is to build community, promote intellectualism, and support Black businesses. A brief overview of our history. I think it was like 2018, 2017, me and my homeboy Jason saw a notice on Facebook about this brother named Mark, who owns a burger joint here in San Antonio called Mark's Outing, about how his business was struggling. We noticed the need also for young Black professionals in San Antonio to have a place where they can build community. So we partnered with Mark to host a conversation at his burger joint with a state representative, Barbara Gervin Hawkins. And that's how this whole thing began. Fast forward into COVID-19, we moved to a digital platform. So now that we can bring authors and entrepreneurs from around the country into conversation with this virtual audience. One of the things that we try to do is partner with Black-owned businesses. So in some cases, we'll pair two entrepreneurs together or an author with an entrepreneur to give both of those Black folk opportunity and exposure to a wider audience. Also, when I think about Black businesses, I think about that in the broadest sense. So my alma mater, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, is a beautiful Black institution. And because of A&T, I was able to get the foundation for getting my PhD. And so with two of my friends, Dr. Terrell Morton and future Dr. Brittany Patrick, we started the From A&T to PhD Endowed Scholarship. And whatever that you gave today to be part of the show, folks who are patrons of the show, 10% of what you gave to be here today goes to support that endowment. So I appreciate all of you all's support. And now, without further ado, we're going to get started with our special guests for today. And we have my cousin Simone Redwine, and she is a fantastic, dynamic lawyer who is Ivy League educated. She earned her law degree from Cornell University, and she has experience practicing intellectual property law with brands like Christian Louboutin and Louis Vuitton, and she is the founder of the Redwine law firm. Also, you can follow her on YouTube. Her channel is Girl Is That Legal, where she gives legal advice in a practical way for all audiences to enjoy and learn. Now, I have to talk about someone who I've admired for a little while. We met briefly years ago at South by Southwest EDU, and that is Professor Tonya Evans, Esquire. I just learned yesterday that JD means that you didn't pass the bar. So she is indeed.
Like, you're not going to disrespect me like that, sir.
Yes,
I'm licensed in 4 states. Let's put some respect on that.
Yes, she has all the credentials. And I want to let y'all know that in addition to being a full professor at the Dickinson Law School at Penn State University, she is the foremost legal expert on blockchain technology and intellectual property. I also want to note that she is a former student athlete at Northwestern University, if I'm not mistaken. She has her law degree from Howard University. And I first learned about her at South by Southwest EDU. She was on a panel discussion with maybe three other Black women who were all like serious experts on what blockchain technology would do for education and all the different fields that exist in our society. And so those of you who joined us last week, those of you who will be joining us next week, I want you all to know that Black folks are and have been central to the development and the proliferation of blockchain technology in a number of ways. She's also been a guest on one of my favorite podcasts, the Scott Galloway podcast, the Scott G Show, and she has her own podcast called The Tech Intersect. So without further ado, my cousin Simone Redwine and Professor Tonya Evans.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's we help a lot of folks because I think that we're often invisible. We're like, we can be seen and not seen at the same time, particularly in either tech or finance. Simone, you know, as well as I do. And so when tech and finance get together and have a baby called crypto, and then we start building out the next internet called blockchain, we want to be represented on all sides of the table. So I really welcome and appreciate conversations like this for sure.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to introduce myself and kind of like what I'm here to help facilitate, which is that I explained to Langston through law school, my first semester at Cornell, my grades were very below mediocre. And it was the first time in my life I wasn't an overachiever. And what I realized is that in order to get my grades up and to just really make sure that I'm understanding the principles, I had to take what was foreign or abstract and then break it down into terms that I understood. So for example, when I was trying to teach myself the different forms of like larceny or embezzlement, instead of these obtuse and really abstract terms, I said, you know what? I am going to learn larceny as it might happen in my life. So, I thought about the time that, I had a homeboy named Cadillac, and Cadillac took me to Magic City for the first time. And he handed me $5,000 and said, here you go, give it to the girls. And I said, okay. And it was $5,000. And I'm a 2L, second year of law school. And I said, this is utterly ridiculous. So instead of throwing all $5,000 in the air, I said, well, what if I only throw 1,000 of it and then I take the other 4,000 and I hide them in my underwear? Well, then what crime have I committed? Just a little embezzlement. Okay, but that's felony embezzlement. But if I take less than $500, I am misdemeanor level C or misdemeanor level A. So I say that to say, one of the ways that I became a stellar academic at law school was that I would take complex topics and I break them down into little bite-sized pieces where I could understand. And so here, I'm here to just kind of help and assist and ask questions for myself as well as I break down and really understand what is blockchain, what are NFTs, and how can we take advantage of them or use them in our daily lives.
I love it. I love it. Well, where you lead, I will follow, because that is literally my life's work. At this point, I feel like I've completely reinvented myself because, first of all, I'm completely tech adjacent. I am not a computer scientist. I am not a finance guru. I started, as you did, as an IP lawyer, really focused on the copyright and trademark aspects. My mom is actually a patent attorney.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I did, but I didn't have a science background, and I didn't really, it wasn't always my life's ambition at first to become a lawyer. But growing up in when I grew up, my dad was at Jefferson Medical School and my mom was at Temple Law School. And I was in the Balsa office eating potato chips, watching a black and white TV.
Oh,
So,
wow.
right. So I feel like, and most of my aunties, I'm an only child, no brothers or sisters, but all of my aunties were dynamic Black women who went to Temple Law. And I just feel like they informed my decision making, my path. It's half like nature, but half nurture as well. And I approached my law school career and everything because I'm intellectually curious. I gather that from you as well. Like you really want to get underneath things and like really figure it out. And I have never been more challenged than I was when I entered the field of blockchain. I'm actually, people can't tell because of what I do as a blockchain and crypto educator, but I'm highly risk adverse. I'm a color inside the lines, check the box. What's the next right thing to do? Usually choosing safe over soul, but this has really pushed me because I had to get it so that I could empower other people, particularly people who have been systemically marginalized in finance and in tech, so that we can figure this out so that our people can really get ahead of the curve because we're really early.
Got it. So I don't know where should we start with understanding or just kind of the general definition of blockchain or NFT, wherever you think we should start.
Okay, so let's start with blockchain and crypto, not to get in the weeds per se, but just to kind of unpack a bit, because in order to really understand the power and the promise of a non-fungible token, we kind of have to start with the original tokens, which are fungible, meaning interchangeable. So let's take a step back. And even, when I talk about what blockchain is, and our entire conversation is actually focused on software. So blockchain software is really intended to record transactions and balances for crypto or any other asset. But the original blockchain is the Bitcoin blockchain that records transactions and balances for Bitcoin. It was launched by a pseudonymous character known as Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who this person or this entity is, so I'm a strong proponent of Satoshi Nakamoto is a Black woman, because clearly. Um, so, and the purpose of blockchain and the Bitcoin blockchain in particular was to create a peer-to-peer form of cash in the same way in the late 90s, early 2000s that peer-to-peer technology was really used to exchange MP3 files or media files. You and
Gotcha.
I as IP lawyers, I'm not really
Napster.
into shit. Right, Napster, Grokster, and all of that, right? And you think of like BitTorrent and some of those other technologies. Satoshi was able to take existing technologies peer-to-peer, certainly the internet and what we call cryptography, which is a very secure method of encrypting messages. It's been around for decades. The military used to use it, but Satoshi combined all of these to create an alternative method of transacting value that didn't require a centralized party, so no government, no no company, no organization, no person. So that meant that there was no barrier for entry. And all of the records are public facing. So a lot of times in finance, systemically marginalized people tend to get taken advantage of because we don't have all the information. And we have securities laws and other laws to try and encourage disclosure and things like that. But people have lost millions and millions and millions of dollars being on the outside looking in because maybe we participated in an investment where we didn't have all the information. So
Right.
the interesting thing about blockchains, because it's a software where the rules are transparent and the rules are embedded and encoded, and so there's no guessing. It's rules without rulers is the way sometimes anarchists describe it. I'm not an anarchist by any stretch of the imagination, but that's basically what a blockchain is. Final point is, think of it as a group text. We all are participating in group texting, right?
Right.
And I'm texting with 10 other people, I delete it from my phone. As long as one person still has the record, that record persists. And then extrapolate that out to millions of computers that maintain the software that maintains the records. That means that natural disaster can come and go, governments can come and go, but the information persists, and that makes it very, very secure. And that is another reason where sometimes places can't trust a government. It's harder to see in the United States, but in other countries, the money's not stable, the government's not stable. This is another way to transact value without relying on a government or an untrustworthy company.
I always thought that this was probably created by some drug dealer somewhere who wanted to be able to move money. Can you talk about, like, to what extent or whether or not, like, this is something that can be used by people to move basically illicit funds? Is there anything preventing that at this point?
Well, it's a great question, because one of the number one myths, I should have mentioned at the outset, I'm working on a book that comes out in the fall, and it's called Digital Money Demystified. And one of the more or most pervasive myths, and it has some truth, so I don't want to minimize it at all in answer to your question, but blockchains are terrible places for nefarious activity because all of the information is public facing. And Simone, you know how important it is when you are kind of following the money to, like, as a matter of chain of custody, all of the records are actually public facing.
Oh,
So on the front end, while it might be easy for me to take Bitcoin and to quickly transfer it, way quicker than it would be if it was going through a bank account, for example. The other side of that is eventually people can see from wallet to wallet to wallet, and actually the Department of Justice, and there's a company called Chainalysis that is really good as a matter of blockchain forensics and actually hunting down that money.
gotcha.
Now, in answer to your question originally, a group called cypherpunks, they're more anarchist than criminal. They're more into privacy than not doing the right thing.
Okay.
They're more into keeping the government out of their business than nefarious activity. But one of the biggest exchanges early on, the name is escaping me. Oh, Mt. Gox was back in like 2014, and it was part of the dark net, and it was very popular for doing all sorts of transactions that involved cryptocurrency because it was easy to transact across borders.
Okay.
Because when we travel, we have to exchange our money for the local currency. You don't have to do that with crypto because it's the same all over the world. But Mt. Gox was shut down. The person who created it went to jail. Much of those funds was recouped or acquired by the Department of Justice. That's actually very, very difficult to do with a dollar. So it's a bit of a misnomer. The number one currency used in nefarious activity is actually the dollar.
Got you.
Absolutely.
And then I think related to that, as you started to describe what fungible tokens were.
Yes.
I wanted to let you continue with that, and then we can transition into what a non-fungible token is.
Okay, so when we think about the term fungibility, most of the tokens in the crypto ecosystem, and there are over 22,000 different types of coins and tokens in the ecosystem. We hear about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, and the crazy dog coins and all of that, but there are a ton of them and they all function quite differently. So it's, I always push back. I just did an episode with Chris Hayes on his podcast earlier today, and I was like constantly pushing back. We can't lump all crypto into one place. But one way that we can lump them is to talk about the difference between fungible and non-fungible. So coins like the ones that I've mentioned, Bitcoin, Ethereum, things that function like a currency that are interchangeable in the same way that a dollar is. So even though technically speaking, our money has a serial number on it, it doesn't matter which one we have because they all are worth the same. When we think about something that's non-fungible, and you know this from law school and your practice, Simone, think of real property, right? The home or land. Think about artwork, which is a great transition as we go in eventually to talk about non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible means unique. It's like a one of one. We can agree to exchange a Renoir for a Basquiat, but they are unique. They're individual, right? They're specific. And so with a non-fungible token, there are certain software standards where we can create a token, but those non-fungible tokens are inextricably linked with some other asset or experience. And I'll talk about this and kind of take a pause and we can unpack it a little bit more. But I liken a non-fungible token to the difference between a deed and a house.
Okay.
Okay, so the deed is not the house, but it is my ability to exercise, to represent ownership, control. Maybe the house burns down, but I technically still own it, right?
Yes.
But I'll need my deed in order to verify that I can get the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Non-fungible tokens function largely in the same way. We've talked about them a lot in connection to art. For example, I'm a big proponent and a major investor in Black NFT art. And collectibles, but companies like Ticketmaster are exploring the uses of it because they want to cut down on scalping by using token gated experiences. There's one unique NFT connected to one ticket, and it dramatically eliminates scalping and things like that.
That makes, oh, wow, that makes perfect sense. That's definitely going to change the game.
Absolutely. And you can think of one of the ways that I'm really excited about using it as well. And again, I'm excited about art for art's sake. There are a lot of people who are not just collectors. They might be investors. They might flip. I get all of that. I like intrinsic, subjective beauty, and that very much is in the space. But I love what we will probably be talking about 5 years from now, where there's so much of a problem with identity, particularly online. I have a ton of scammers sliding into people's DMs saying, hey, I'm Professor Evans and send me your money. Like, I'm not an investor. I don't do that, but it's very difficult to play whack-a-mole on the internet with scammers. But if we can use unique digital identities represented by NFTs, perhaps connected with a unique wallet, I think it would dramatically reduce fraud online. And that's a major, major problem.
Makes sense. Okay, makes sense. And then with NFTs, can anyone own or can anyone create an NFT?
The short answer is yes. That's the blessing and the curse, but yes. I find from the point of view, particularly from artists who have also been marginalized in the art world, Because in the same way that, for example, Bitcoin has disintermediated finance, right? Made it possible for people who ordinarily are kept out of or blocked out of finance or maybe redlined out of home ownerships or some of the other means of participating in wealth accumulation, right? The way that we usually accumulate wealth is with assets that work harder than me. I need to be in the south of France. I can't be working for my money and exchanging time for money. This is not good to me, right?
Yeah.
But there are all of these barriers, and I don't mean that I'm going to be kicked out. I have the privilege of education and some finance and things like that. But on the art side, non-fungible tokens are also disintermediating art. Art is a very insular, asymmetric, opaque environment that isn't very welcoming to people who don't do fine art, right?
Mm,
Or who are not respected, or you have all of these gatekeepers that are keeping people from participating, that don't give you access to the places where you can actually show your art, or God forbid, get into museums. And after that first sale, that artist never sees any other money,
right.
right? So an interesting way to your point about can someone create a token or an NFT, because it's all software, they're basically 14 codes, lines of code. And if you don't code yourself, there are so many platforms at this point that support people in creating and monetizing their creativity. And also keep in mind that the token is a separate asset from the art, which is something people are like, I go online, I see this picture. Why do I need an NFT? I literally am looking at it. I can literally copy and paste it. All right. And the point is well made, but you can also drive down my block. I suggest you do not, but you could drive by my block and take a picture of my house, or you could own
Right.
my house.
Yes.
Okay. So the choice is yours. You can own $1 million home, or you can have a picture on your mug. Like, you can choose, right?
Gotcha. Yes.
So yes, and this is really exciting because, if you're a creative person, there are many different ways that you can monetize things. It's been exciting to see even legacy systems like the NBA, for example, monetizing old stuff that is dusty on the shelves, and they are repurposing it, creating NFT top shots where they're like 30-second videos or maybe pictures, and they've created digital trading cards. That brought whole new life to their IP portfolio because they were able to leverage technology and bring to life stuff that wasn't being monetized. So that's another way to get
And
in.
explain what you could do if you owned an NFT trading card. What could you
Mm.
possibly do with that? And how would that work?
Some is like street cred.
Nice.
Some is flipping. So I can think of some of the NFTs that I own, and some is literally just for the beauty of having it or the pride of ownership. Some is when you think of like some of those profile pic uh, um, projects like Bored Apes and all of that. People can say, I've spent, I don't know why, but $500,000 or $1 million on this. It gives token gated experiences. So if you own a board ape, you're going to get invited to all the things, and you only get access by showing your wallet and that you actually own a board ape, and you get opted into all of these fantastic experiences. So the more interesting thing may be, in addition to either buying something you find beautiful or valuable, you might be like, I don't like it at all, but evidently other people do, and reselling it on the market, flipping something, buying low, selling high. It's the same type of thing. All cryptocurrencies currently are taxed as capital assets. So it's
Ah,
almost a bit of a misnomer that we call it currency. And the original intention was that it be peer-to-peer cash, but they're taxed as capital assets.
got you. Now, a viewer in the chat has made a
Mhm.
great point. They stated IBM has been pushing since early 2021 to make patents NFTs. And my thought is, yeah, when I think of patents,
Yeah.
copyrights, even trademarks, I don't know why they haven't been NFTs beforehand, but what are your thoughts about making things such as patents, trademarks, or copyrights NFTs?
I love it because the other thing with the token standards or the coding, you can encode it with all sorts of metadata that oftentimes is missing. From a licensing perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It's so difficult. Think of all the people, Simone, that we are, trying to track down those people who actually want to pay to license something. It was always a nightmare for me in the entertainment world, you know, tracking down people. If the metadata was always carried with the asset, it would make it so much easier. And interestingly, and I'm going to get back to the patent and trademark in particular, and copyrights, I think, because of the uniqueness and the ability to track in real time. But just this idea of creating maybe like patent pools and licensing, all of it can be brought to life in a way that is governed. We haven't talked about smart contracts, but those are the token standards underneath that are automating performance. Let's actually spend, before we go back to the patent and trademark NFTs, let's say one thing about smart contracts, because from our perspective, it's not a contract. There's not offer consideration. Like, it always used to make my head hurt when I heard it. But what smart contracts are a bit of code that automates the performance. So think of, this is a super rudimentary explanation. A performance of a certain thing. Let me give this example, and I think I'll bring it home. If you go, because it could be the performance of anything, but it needs to be an if-then. Like, if this happened, then this happens. So the most rudimentary example would be like a vending machine. The soda costs $1.50. You put in $2. Automatically, there's a system where you get the soda and you get 50 cents change, right? So nobody has to come out unless the soda doesn't come out, and that's a disaster. But assuming everything works as it's supposed to be, right? It's automated. Now translate that. Back in the day, I practiced law for 10 years before I started teaching. And at the end, it was mostly about entertainment and IP stuff. And I was working mostly with, I was basically a literary lawyer, but a lot of authors and reviewing and negotiating contracts, yada, yada. There were many parts of the contract that could be automated, like escalating royalties.
Okay.
If my author sells 5,000 books, on the 5,001st, they get blah, 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 blah. They shouldn't have to pay me $500 an hour. They shouldn't have to owe anything to their agent. Nobody else should be involved. It should just be automated. Reasonable reserves and all of this. Micro payments can be automated through the smart contract coding, and all of the tokens that we're talking about, the non-fungible tokens, have smart contracts that are running underneath, and they can be programmed to do anything. They can pay on a certain date at a certain time on a certain trigger, but it doesn't do well for the contractual parts that depend on human intervention or human judgment, you know what I mean? But there are a lot of things. My client gets paid once a quarter on the final day of the blah, blah, blah. Those things can be automated. And so that could be a way where you have kind of like a hybrid contract that can facilitate certain things automatically and kind of make things better, faster, cheaper. And then a final point to what you asked about patents. Representing patents, they can, and trademarks, they're at the lifetime as long as they're in use. They can be coded to function in a number of different ways, which makes it easier to track, easier to monetize, easier to license, and all sorts of things. We're a long way away from that, not because the technology doesn't exist, because it does. We can barely get the government to do the basic things. So it's not a matter of the absence of the technology, who's going to pay for it, the transition. So it's more that we are in the way of technology than technology itself at this point.
No, that makes perfect sense. What are some ways where African Americans, where Black people, you know, whatever, wherever your boat took you, Black people, where we can take advantage of NFTs in our lives?
So if you're not creative, that isn't necessarily the end all be all, because as we said, we can think more broadly. I believe very much in entrepreneurship. Outside of being a tenured professor, I also am a founder of an online academy, Advantage Evans Academy. I do the same thing we're doing right now to educate folks about this area. I have NFT for Law Guide. I have From Cash to Crypto. I have Decode the Future about DeFi. And there are many different ways that I encourage people not just to be an investor or a consumer, but a builder. One of the best things that happened to me in my life was reinvigorating myself, reinventing myself to be relevant for the future of work and of wealth and creativity. And what I say to people, whatever you do right now, go on your favorite search engine, not right now, but after we finish our conversation. This is your homework today. For everybody to go and search whatever it is that you do right now and blockchain, and to,
Mm.
to see what the hits are that come up, because this technology is disintermediating many, dare I say, all sectors of industry, commerce, and business. And then take a deep dive where you are. Nobody can know, as quote unquote expert as I am, I don't know all the things about all the things, but I know a hell of a lot about what I do. And once I found my lane, to take a deep dive there and to figure out in what ways can I be relevant as an educator, as a lawyer, as an entrepreneur, and to figure out in what ways can I deliver services in a better way, where are the holes where I can meet a need, and I can monetize it and expertise myself in that area, so that we end up being the smartest person in the room, because most people are not having the conversation, Simone, that you and I are having right now. So that's definitely where I would start.
Love it. Now, my fiance wanted me to ask this. So if some people may have seen me before, I might look a little familiar. My fiance and I met on a dating reality show on the Oprah Winfrey Network. It's
Yes.
Love. Yes. And he proposed last summer on the very show we met, and it aired about a week and a half ago. It aired January 6th. So we're
Mhm.
very excited planning the wedding. So he wanted to know, is it possible, could we make our wedding invitation NFTs? Like,
You could.
and how would that work? How would you, do something like that? I think he likes the idea of it being like a keepsake, but fun. Yes.
I love that. And please tell him what I told you before we went on air, that the two people you heard screaming the loudest, that was me and my mom. So it's fine. That is absolutely a great idea. And the short answer is yes, because one, I just think it's really fun to lean in. It's something that's novel, as well as absolutely a keepsake. You can, however many guests that you have, you can make it a limited edition. So literally just that number. You might have two that are just for you two. Maybe you have the ones that are for your wedding party, and then you have one that's for your guests. And so that could be really interesting too. There are different ways that you can actually display them. So there's some really great companies that can have like large displays, smaller displays as well. Yeah, and also it's a great way to teach people too, because I think the best way for people to learn is when they have a vested interest in like figuring it out. Like I always believe that people would absolutely figure crypto out if Beyonce was only selling her tickets through NFTs.
Yeah.
People would figure it out.
You are
Okay.
right on that. We would figure it out. Yes.
So yes, and I think that's a really exciting way you can connect it with um, images, you can connect it with music and the in-person experience, like allow people, because people will try and sneak up in your wedding. So
Yeah.
you gotta like get rid of the paparazzi, right?
Yeah.
Need to know basis. My dad's was in the military, so I operate on need to know basis. So a token gated experience where you literally have to show the wallet and scan the token to enter certain places. The short answer and the long answer, absolutely, go for it. And if you're gonna do it, excuse you, I want the first right of refusal.
All right. All right. That sounds perfect. Now, I've been writing down little questions here that I have for you. I want to hear about how you went from your prior career. Obviously, this is still related to your career, but how did you
Yeah.
get into crypto and blockchain and NFTs?
One of my best friends was getting a master's up at Syracuse in their journalism, and it was in media, and it was like the future of media, and there was some blockchain group of eggheads that were getting together to talk about something. I don't know what she was talking. There was some magic, internet money, something. But the way more she was talking about it, it included, and I had heard about blockchain. This was in 2017. Um, blockchain basically is open source software. I don't know if I said it earlier, but that's the reason that it's public facing, permissionless. And it really is the build of like the next base layer of the internet. And that interested me because at the time, um, entrepreneurs were getting in touch with me from the tech space to figure out how to monetize their decentralized apps or their projects on top of the base layer of blockchain.
Okay.
So I had to figure that out. And as an IP lawyer, I was like, well, that's interesting. And I'm sure I can write some type of law review article, which is one I think that was shared with you. I was actually one of the first to write at the intersection of intellectual property, NFTs. It's crypto kitties, cryptography, and copyright. When I was basically like booed off of every academic stage, including at Berkeley, but who's laughing now? But I digress. I'm very petty, so you see me now or see me later. It'll cost you more now.
There you
But it was through my conversations with her about what they were talking about on a weekly basis that made me know, no matter what it meant for me in terms of crypto, which at the time was a separate matter for me, I had to, as I told you, I'm a lifelong learner, early adopter. What would this mean for my students? What would this mean for my students to be conversant in the language of technology so that they are prepared, the next wave of lawyer to represent folks who were building in the space? It was clear to me that it was not a matter of if, but when. And we talk about it in the crypto space as basically falling down the rabbit hole. Like, it was the fall and winter of 2017. I remember vaguely going to my mom's house for Christmas. I woke up in my pajamas like, oh my God, it's going to change the world. I want to shout from the rooftop. I put on like a tinfoil hat, and the rest was history. And I was still on break in early 2018 before we went back to school. I was at Franklin Pierce School of Law at the time up in New Hampshire. And my dean sent out an email that said somebody had dropped out of a presentation in Thailand, in Bangkok. And we needed to send somebody in 2 weeks to teach on a number of Web3 topics, blah, 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 artificial something, something, and blockchain and crypto. And so, and I got the email, I responded immediately, I'll go. And when I think about it now, it's literally ridiculous because I went to YouTube University. What did I know? But I realized at the time, one, I'm always going to bet on myself. So that's a no-brainer.
As you should.
And if somebody's going to pay for me to go halfway around the world to do this, that meant that, one, I had 2 weeks to get myself together, and two, no matter what I didn't know, I knew more than them. And it was just an opportunity to lean into and figure out. And that led to, there's so few people, Simone, doing this work. It led to me being invited to WIPO to train lawyers and staff there in that same year. South by Southwest came up, and all sorts of things. So with each speaking opportunity in each article, it led to other experiences. And that's what I mean by just going deep in your particular lane, because it really was so relevant not only to teaching, but to IP and just what IP was going to look like in the future, right? Because so many companies, the ones who publicly say they're not interested, were privately filing hundreds of patents and trademarks in particular. They couldn't really touch copyright because of the open source nature. But I was like, if IBM and so, they're all paying all this money, we need to pay attention. So that's how I got in.
Absolutely. And so we also wanted to talk, we had someone who had a question about DAP wallets. So could you first speak to what is a DAP wallet?
So are they speaking of DAP?
Yeah,
Like
DAP.
a decentralized app? Okay. So if it's an interesting question, because I want to say that wallets are wallets and they can interact with decentralized applications and crypto as well. Wallets are basically your interface to communicate with a blockchain so that I can write and sign off on the transactions. My wallet holds essentially a private key. It's the only way that I can interact and send messages to the blockchain about how many Bitcoin or whatever I'm dealing with. And the same holds true for decentralized applications, for decentralized autonomous organizations. Anytime you're interacting with and transmitting information about transactional data, then you need to use a wallet in order to do that. Wallets can be very easy to set up. There are a lot of different types of them. They're not all the same. So when you are using a specific type of cryptocurrency or a specific decentralized application, you have to use the appropriate wallet. And there's no customer service. Like, the blessing and the curse of the crypto space is that, as a matter of like Kwanzaa, like Kujichakulia, like self-determination, self-custody, it's about us being our own banks and in charge of our own stuff. We are not, I'll speak for myself. I wasn't brought up to do that. I was brought up to trust other people more than myself. So
Mm.
it's been a major learning process for me. And I think for us as Black people and as women, that the autonomy and the power that comes in being in charge of your stuff, and by stuff, I mean, our assets, is a
Uh-huh.
sense of power that we really have to lean into. So using a wallet, this is the other thing, using a wallet means that you have control and custody over your assets. I think many people are familiar with the debacle that is the FTX exchange and Sam Bankman-Fried, and people have
Yes.
heard about that. That wasn't a failure of crypto. That was a failure of people trusting someone who was an asshole, excuse me,
Yeah.
allegedly. Okay. So people sent their assets onto a centralized exchange, which means it went from their private controlled wallet onto the ledger of FTX. And basically you get an IOU. It looks like a bank account, but it is not a bank account because it's not FDIC insured. Okay. It's an exchange.
Right.
It's a marketplace where we go to exchange fiat, which is government issued currencies, dollars, et cetera, with crypto or crypto to crypto. You make your transactions, you get them back into your wallet. I don't care if you're engaging with a DApp or with crypto. I never blame a victim. So I'll just say those who pulled their money off or their value off of FTX didn't lose it because it wasn't there for him to allegedly misappropriate, okay, and commingle. So, but wallets are a critical part in terms of learning. I actually have a free 7-lesson course. It takes people about an hour to go through. It introduces you to wallets and exchanges and a little bit about crypto tax, which is an important subject too, to learn about the different types of wallets. You can go to advantageevans.com, sign up for that. 7 lessons, 1 hour, quick win, so that we get this right.
Fantastic, fantastic. No, also, a viewer made a comment about unstoppable domains. Are you familiar with those? Could you describe those? What those
So
are?
it sounds like I'm more familiar with ENS domains. So these are like decentralized domains. They're the same way that I think of like the .com boom where people were buying up all of the names and then they would resell them. And people were
Yes.
like cyber squatting, and that was a whole thing, became like illegal. We're seeing that same phenomenon in the crypto world too.
Right.
I bought up every version of my name and my business. I believe in staking my territory with digital assets, but unstoppable domains would allow you to participate and buy. How's the best way to describe this? Let me get at it this way. Wallet addresses are an alphanumeric string of gobbledygook.
Okay. Got it.
In this,
Like
right?
that. I know that. I know what that is.
Right? It's a very, very legal term. In the same way, when you think of an IP address online, series of numbers, right? And so
Right.
instead of calling up the numbers, we have an overlay, something that we can remember, advantageevans.com. We have domain names that replace, but also align with this IP address. And the same thing is happening for wallets in the crypto space, where I have, IP Prof Evans for my wallet address. I can give people that and people can send crypto or I can make transactions instead of my wallet address, which is a far more complicated thing.
But where can you go to create those types of things?
With ENS, I don't want to misstate because I was about to say, oh, you can just search. I was like, no, that's a bad idea. Don't just search. Maybe let me do this after we finish. And Langston, if you indulge me, I can send a few things. Maybe you could push it out to the folks or put it in the show notes, and then I could give specific links so that people aren't getting lost on the interweb, if that would help.
That would be great. Yes.
Wonderful.
And then also, I just want to talk a little bit before we go about the community of Black entrepreneurs, of just Blacks in tech and Blacks that are working in the blockchain and technology areas. Are there any organizations or any nonprofits where if you want to work with other Blacks who are excited, other Black people excited about this? Gosh, this is not the 1930s.
Well, you could have said worse. You could have said worse. So we'll go with Blacks, the Blacks.
Got it. Yeah. Is there like an organization or a nonprofit, anything like that, that's been created yet?
So there is the first thing, since we've been talking a lot about NFTs, blacknftart.com, run by Iris Nevins. She's fantastic. Now, again, full disclosure, I'm an investor in Black NFT art. So the common form of Black NFT art, but also the specific entity. And they have incredible educational initiatives. They help, to your point earlier, onboard people, particularly creatives, to onboard into the space so they can monetize their art. And they're just fantastic. I cannot say enough. And you know, a Black woman leading the way is very impressive, to be sure. There is the Black Bitcoin Billionaires Club that started on one of the social medias outlets. It's escaping me now, but they have a prominent website and they host a lot of things as well. So they have a lot of free programming as well that talks about how to stack sats, Satoshis, which is the smallest denomination of a Bitcoin. And so that we can all become at least a Satoshi millionaire, which is roughly about $100,000 equivalent in Bitcoin. And so that's great. We have, what's her name? Oh, Carmel Cadet as well. I can't remember the name of her company, but she has built a very robust company that bridges the divide between centralized finance and decentralized finance. And she has a lot of wonderful projects, and she does a lot of speaking engagements, podcasts. I'm going to have her on the pod soon as well. Obviously, I want you to come to advantageevans.com, and I have a range of things from free webinars and masterclasses, free short courses, and certainly one-on-one coaching content and community. So I have a robust community where people, this is really, you know, when I first built out my courses, and again, I have 3 flagships, From Cash to Crypto, which is really the introductory course, Decode the Future, which focuses more specifically on decentralized finance, and NFTs and the law, which talks about a lot of what we've talked about tonight. And they were popular, but I realized that people needed more support. So I created a club as well, my Grand Slam Circle, so that people receive my coaching, the community, and the content, rather than self-guiding their way. Like, this is not a self-guided place, or you can try and self-guide your way through YouTube University, and then you come back to me so I can actually make it make sense, because I want you to avoid all of the mistakes that I made. And a lot of students who have gone through, their alum now and still in the circle or in the club. And that's another way, certainly, to get more information.
Perfect. Someone also mentioned that Clubhouse, actually, it says Black.
Yes, that was it. Thank you, Caleb. That was it.
They often meet on Clubhouse and have sessions.
Yes.
So,
thank you, Caleb.
Oh, and Visa supports Black NFT art.
Yes. Kai Sheffield, who's a brother who works for Visa, was instrumental in making that happen. And they have a lot of fantastic support. Kai is also involved in, like, if you don't walk away with any other names from this, I want everybody to know Aku. And I want somebody to drop in the chat about how to get to Aku. Aku is this mystical, magical astronaut boy, little Black boy astronaut, created by Micah Johnson, who is a former Major League Baseball player, Black man who also was the first to cross the divide between monetizing in the NFT space and going, like, he's licensed Aku at this point to be in major motion picture. Aku is phenomenal. I own some Akus as well. And that is a project. This is not legal or financial advice, but you know, you heard it here first. That's all I'm gonna say.
Writing that down.
There you go. Let's go. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
There it is. Yep, Micah Johnson.
And here's our host. He's back with us.
Excellent.
So one, I want to thank the both of you for having this conversation. I think our audience got a lot out of it. They enjoyed the conversation. So I heard this term last week from Clev Messidor.
Oh,
and she
yes.
said, it's the first time I heard crypto bros before. And so, like, we got some crypto bros who are in the chat, some Black men, some crypto brothers in the chat who are like deep into cryptocurrency and things like that.
Yes.
So appreciate the audience members joining and interacting as well. At this time, I want to, if there's any more questions that people may have, you can type them in the chat, you can type them in the Q&A, and we'll get to your question before we wrap up. And to give you all an opportunity to do that, I'm gonna ask Professor Evans a question. I'm thinking about this article. I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing. I did read the abstract though, that I posted on LinkedIn. And it came out in 2022, Degentrified Black Genius, Blockchain, Copyright, and the disintermediation of creativity. And in
Mhm.
part of that, you talk about how, basically the mainstream like steals our culture, right? Doesn't
Mm.
appreciate it, but gets all the value from it. And I think it's important that we sometimes get caught up in the narratives that get put out there by the crypto bros about
Mhm.
go buy some Dogecoin or go buy, whatever, just because Elon Musk said it, right? We're going to get this. Can you talk about the importance of blockchain technology, not as a tool for a get rich quick scheme, but as a tool for Black folks to really take advantage of their own creative genius? And I know you got into some nuance in the conversation, but
Yeah.
I think thematically, right, just driving home the importance of us leveraging this technology for our own freedom and for our own economic liberation.
Thank you for that. When I think of um, how often we get left behind, more often than not intentionally, because this country was built on our backs, but not for us, built by us, but not for us. Because we always have these gatekeepers who say where, when, and how. It makes me think of, long story short, me having sizable assets with Merrill Lynch and wanting to buy a home, and they a pint of blood. I have no children, same profession for years. They know who I am. They have my assets. What they put me through led me to actually walk away from the table. And the reason I could was because I had my own assets. I bought that damn house myself, and it has no mortgage in the Art Museum area of Philadelphia. That's power, right? It's being unapologetic about our movements in the space. And how do we create that opportunity? When I think of getting left behind, I think of the VC space. I think of the VCs who threw millions of dollars at Sam Bankman-Fried, who had no board of directors, no accounting, because he failed up and they gave him the benefit of the doubt. We don't get the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
But we don't need it with this technology. This technology doesn't care if you're a Black, woman, queer, where you live, what your zip code is. Either you have the asset or you don't. That is power, and it's early. So that while people are trying to figure it out and saying crypto, you can be stacking your Bitcoin in particular. If you want to venture out, great. I'm not a maxi, but Bitcoin functions differently. It's hard cap 21 million, 19 million Bitcoin are already in circulation. By the time the rest of the world figures it out, it's too late. This is our time to do this on our terms, to be savvy so that we don't have to rely on others to give us permission or to teach us. You don't have to buy it right now. Learn the language. Demystify it. Learn how to move in this space so that people have to come to us for the answers. So we're the smartest person in the room, so that we're not starting over, because every generation we're getting further and further behind. Think of how much the world has changed just in 3 years, let alone my 53. So this is the way that we have to reorient ourselves to this next iteration of the internet. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. Bitcoin came out in 2009. Don't let people tell you that this is a fly-by-night thing. Every government in the world is working on their own central bank digital currency, leveraging the same technology. We got to get this, right? You don't move fast, but move is my final point.
I wish I didn't ask people to ask more questions, because that's the mic drop right there.
There we go.
That's it. That's it. And I don't think we have any other questions, but I do want you to say the name of your book that's going to be coming out. I think you said in March. What's the name of the book that's going to be coming out?
Digital Money Demystified. It comes out fall 2023. I want you all to rock with me and help amplify this so that that the publishing industry and the world knows that we can write books like this. We can educate not only ourselves but others as well. And so let's rock and make this a bestseller, and let's help a lot of people who need to get the accurate information so that we can make informed choices. Forget like the carnival barkers and the crazy investors. Like, let's right size the information and the conversation so that we have the tools and the resources and the knowledge that we need to move powerfully in the space.
Yeah. Professor Evans, thank you for coming. Cousin Simone, thank you for hosting. I
Thank you,
appreciate both of you.
Absolutely.
Yes. And Simone, me and Brandy is really Simone's cousin. I'm cousin by marriage. We're looking forward to getting our
Aw.
NFT invitation for the
Okay.
wedding.
I'm looking forward to helping.
I'm telling him tonight. I'm telling him tonight. And I'm telling him, Professor Evans, I might have to bother her and get a consultation to figure out how to
You
get
know
this.
where I'm at. I'm here for you. I'll leave my mom at home because she'll bother you. But
Well, thank you
Thank you
so
all.
much. We
Yes,
truly
yes.
appreciate
Those of you in the audience, I'm going to ask you to stay. I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to talk about the next few shows that we have coming up about cryptocurrency. We even have a conversation about venture capital. So y'all give me 1 second to get my screen share set up so I can give you more information about what we have coming up next. And give me 1 second. Here we go. All right. All right. I'm having a little trouble. Okay, let's get this screen share going. Can y'all see my screen? Move that over. There we go. All right, we should be ready to screen share now. There we go. All right, finally got my screen share set up. So coming up next week on Thursday at the same time, we're having a conversation with Tavonia Evans, who is the founder of Guap Coin. And so she was one of the first African Americans to actually create their own coin that is targeted to the African diaspora. So we're going to be talking about economic liberation and the things that she has been able to do in terms of creating a coin that is meant particularly for our own economic advancement. Also want to let you all know that we're having a very special lunchtime edition of Entrepreneurial Appetite called Legends Lunch, and our special guest will be Preston James. He is an angel investor and champion for diverse and inclusive tech startups out of Austin, Texas. And again, this is going to be a very special lunch version of Entrepreneurial Appetite. And so for those of you who are joining us virtually, the conversation begins at 12 p.m. and it ends at 1 p.m. Central Time. And so last but not least, if you all enjoyed today's show, if you want to support today's show, you can become one of our founding 55 patrons by scanning the QR code there. As a patron of Entrepreneurial Appetite, you're going to get access to our monthly conversations, but also you get access to our podcasts and our video episodes as well. Moving into this year in 2023, we're going to have much more pre-recorded episodes just so I can get more and more content out there. So all of our episodes won't be live, but you all will be able to get access to the content early. I do promise to continue doing our monthly live conversations though, so you all will also get access to one conversation virtually live at least once a month. So thank you all for joining us here today. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and thank you much.